So today we're here to talk about everyone's favorite god, one of the most memed characters in the entire game, and possibly the most buffed character in the previous patch. That's right, we are talking about none other than Zamasu himself. So why is he considered to be one of the biggest winners of this patch? Well, let's take a look and find out. So the first change we're going to talk about is the buff to his stand medium. His stand medium now has faster startup. While this may seem like a minor change, it actually goes a very long way. His medium covers a lot of distance, so the fact that it actually starts up faster is a pretty considerable buff. This now means at round start, he's much more deadly than he was before. His stand medium was already a good round start poke, but now it's even better. As you can see, from round start, it's hitting on the 10th frame. And even more unbelievably, from close range, it now hits in 8 frames. So he now has an 8-frame medium with considerable range, and we're talking about a character whose primary asset to your team is the fact that if he lands a medium, he's most likely going to either take most of the opponent's health or kill. So the fact that his go-to TOD poke is faster is just, it's only going to benefit you. This also means that 5L, 5M is now reflect safe. So now you can poke at the mid-range with much more confidence. Next up, we're going to talk about his 2H. They extended the hitbox forward, so now it hits opponents from further away. Always a nice welcome buff. And it may seem crazy, and it is, but his 2H now is also projectile invincible. While this is a very unexpected and situational change, it does give him some nice new options in situations that you will find yourself in from time to time. This next change is my personal favorite, and single-handedly the most requested change for Zamasu since his initial release all the way back in Season 1. I'm of course talking about the buff to his 5S. For those that don't know, Zamasu's S has always been a high, which means that for most of the cast, the Ki Blast would travel clearly over their head if they were either crouching or dashing, and for a lot of characters, even if they were standing still, the Ki Blast would pass cleanly over their head, making it extremely difficult to play grounded neutral with Zamasu. But now, I absolutely love to see it. Outside of the obvious neutral applications, this also means he now has access to better block strings. Before, if Zamasu wanted to end a string, he had no choice but to end it with a special move, virtually ending his stagger and telling the opponent, hey, it's your turn now. But due to the fact that 5S actually hits crouching opponents, much like the rest of the cast, he can now stagger into an S, which gives him more stagger options. And by spacing your stagger slightly, you can get down to as low as -3 on block, which leads to a situation where you can still, even from this range, poke your opponent, but your opponent may not necessarily be able to poke you. So next up, we're going to cover his jump light. They went ahead and increased the active frames and enlarged the move's hitbox. Thanks to these changes, he can now reliably tag super dashes and raw tags out of the air. Having the ability to contest super dashes while airborne is one of the best utilities a character can have in this game. And thanks to the change to his jump light, Zamasu's neutral just got substantially better. These special moves changes are pretty substantial, so We're going to just take this one step at a time, and we're going to start first with his Lariat. So both the light and medium versions of this move now transition faster into flight mode on block. Here's the light version and the medium. As you can see by the frame advantage, I'm left at -5. This is a big step up from the previous patch. Going from his Lariat to flight mode actually left you extremely unsafe. Certain characters such as Brawly here could actually punish you on block for trying to go into flight from any of his Lariats. But now thanks to this buff, that is no longer the case. This next change is extremely substantial. It's one of the biggest changes to his kit. He can now cancel his Lariat into flight mode on whiff. So now, regardless of if you make contact with the opponent or not, you have an even faster way of canceling into flight. So now you can effectively poke at your opponent, and whether you hit them or not, you are still able to go into flight. The last buff to his Lariat we're going to cover for now is the EX version. This is a nice little quality of life change. The EX Lariat now knocks the opponent down for longer. This is strictly to help with combos. In the previous version, sometimes if you were to hit this move from a distance and go into Sacred Light, smaller hurtbox characters such as GT Goku may have rolled out of the combo. But thanks to that quality of life buff, that's much less likely to happen. And now, regardless of your opponent's hurtbox size, you can confidently land your combo. Moving on to one of his signature moves, and also one of his biggest game-changing buffs, is the change to his Wall of Light. This move can now be cancelled into flight at any time. Before the patch, if you wanted to go into flight mode with Wall of Light, you would either have to A, summon the Wall of Light, and then enter flight mode, which most opponents are not going to give you the time to do this, I can assure you. Or B, you would have to go into flight mode and then summon Wall of Light, which again, most opponents are not going to be gracious enough to stand by and watch you do this. So the fact that you can get into flight mode in one fluent motion is insane, to put it lightly. It is such a huge change. His Wall of Light is one of his most powerful tools. The whole concept of this tool is to layer it on top of his other special moves. So being able to enter into flight move with this move is just crazy. And now it's time to talk about the change that brings Zamasu's entire new kit together. The buff to his flight mode. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack here with what they did to his flight. So just like with the other special moves, we're going to take this one step at a time. So the first and most noticeable buff to Zamasu's flight that we're going to cover is simply the movement speed. As you can see, he moves much faster now. The rate at which he now moves makes his already high utility flight mode borderline broken. Before the patch, many people already considered his flight mode to be the best aspect of the character because there's not a lot of counterplay to it. But thanks to the buff to his movement speed, the few options that were considered counterplay to his flight mode are much less effective now. The next flight buff we're going to cover is the duration. This is another one where they were extremely generous with their buff. It's so long now that you could potentially call an assist, wait until it's left the screen, and fly until it's back. And still have time left over to call it again. Plenty of time left over to call it again. The speed combined with the duration turn his flight into something that the opponent just cannot ignore. He could always slow down the neutral, but now his ability to just negate certain characters' tools cannot be denied. Now, as if buffing the speed and duration were not enough to make Zamasu's flight mode borderline broken, Arxis was still not done buffing it, and they decided to go a step even further and give him a brand new special move that can only be performed during flight. He can now, in flight mode, teleport forward or backwards. This change literally changes everything. This teleport, believe it or not, is actually frame 1 invincible. And what that means is it is completely invincible from the first frame of activation. One of the few options your opponent does have to prevent you from simply flying around the screen is to super dash. But now that Arxis has given him this, that is no longer an option. Due to the fact that it's invincible on the first frame, you have plenty of time to react to the fact that the opponent is flying at you, and you can completely avoid their super dash, negating the situation. With all the changes that Zamasu has received, it gets more and more difficult for me to pick what my favorite one is, but I will say I think this is the smartest change. Like, whoever it is at Arxis that came up with this change specifically, you know, hats off to you. Like, you are the MVP of this patch. And as crazy as it may sound, Arxis was still not done buffing his flight mode, as they went ahead and enhanced every single one of his Lariats performed during flight mode. So each Lariat now hits further down, making it easier to tag opponents while in flight mode from a greater distance, even if they're ducking. The medium version now sends the opponent sliding for longer, which sets you up more easily for his combo routes. Just like with the EX change, this makes it more likely to hit all opponents regardless of hitbox size. So once again, if you're fighting like a small hitbox character, you don't have to worry about your combo dropping. And then a change that I have personally always wanted, they went ahead and made the EX Lariat from flight mode hit confirmable. So you now are able to combo off of it on normal hit and retain your smash. Thanks to this change, you can now go from flight mode to a full combo conversion. On top of all the other changes we just mentioned to his Lariat, he can also cancel his flight mode Lariats on block into his teleport. What this means is Zamasu can now go from his extremely buffed flight mode to a plus position on block, and +6 means you are plus enough that the opponent cannot 2H you. And even better, the teleport can also be cancelled into off of Divine Order, leaving you at a staggering +14 on block, as well as giving you new combo opportunities on hit. So all things considered, Zamasu's flight mode is incredibly strong now. Between the new movement speed, the longer duration, the frame 1 invincible teleport, the ability to be plus at almost any time, the ability to convert into new combos, the ability to mix up when calling assists, the ability to layer with assists, the possibilities are almost endless. Like, his flight mode can now be an offensive or defensive tool. For a character whose greatest weakness used to be their neutral, it's very satisfying to now see that be one of his greatest strengths. And once you start to layer all of his new flight mode options together, it truly does turn him into a brand new character. And lastly, we're going to cover the changes to his assist. They went ahead and increased the frame advantage on block. It is now plus 30 up from plus 22. To make up for the fact that his assist hit such a wide arc, it used to have low block stun. It was around plus 22, but now it has the block stun of an actual beam assist, being plus 30. So that is a pretty substantial buff considering, again, the angle that this assist covers. It's undeniably one of the best projectile assists in the game now. Not to mention the actual hit stun. This is one of those assists where you can take your time and run across the whole screen and still easily convert. This assist is incredibly good now. It was already good before, but now it is amazing. Before we wrap up, I wanted to briefly go over how the new system mechanic changes affect Zamasu. The most notable of all the system changes to affect Zamasu specifically is the change to the meter penalty cooldown on EX moves. You now gain more meter than you had depending on the combo route. Zamasu's team utility of being a high damaging character has also become more valuable thanks to the new tag mechanic. Being able to bring him in off of any stray hit special move is highly beneficial to just about any team. And with that, we've covered just about all of Zamasu's major changes in the Season 4 patch. I personally would just like to say that I never imagined that they would ever buff him this much. I truly believed that they were just going to, at the most, give him 5S and call it a day, but they went so far above and beyond that. I'm still finding it hard to believe that he is as good as he is. That's the nice thing about reaching this late into a fighting game's lifespan, is like the developers usually become a little more lenient and they let the characters breathe a little more, and the result is just characters that are like dozens of times more fun and more viable. Zamasu's time has finally come. He is now an official selectable character on the character select screen. You'll love to see it. And that's going to do it for my coverage of Zamasu's changes. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave a comment below or head over to my stream at twitch.tv/MajinAcolyte. I'm always down to answer questions. I love helping people out. I'm still new to making guides like this, so if you have any constructive criticism for me, feel free to let me know. If you enjoyed the video, if it was helpful at all, feel free to leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Take it easy.